Good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining us tonight. My name is Emily Morta from Modernizing Medicine. We're excited to speak to you about Modernizing Medicine's revenue cycle management offering. Tonight's presenters are Tom Schildmeyer from Modernizing Medicine and Marie Miller from Danville Dermatology. We'll start tonight's presentation with an explanation of what revenue cycle management really is and an introduction of Modernizing Medicine's RCM service, ModMed RCM. We'll then hear from Marie Miller, Office Manager of Danville Dermatology in Kentucky, who will share her experience with ModMed RCM, followed by a question and answer session. Please write in your questions at any time during the webinar in the questions box on your GoToWebinar panel. We will do our best to answer all questions, but if for some reason we cannot get to them all, we will follow up with answers after the broadcast. It is my pleasure to introduce Tom Schildmeyer from Modernizing Medicine.
Thank you very much, Emily, and thank everyone for taking your evening to share some time with us. And our ultimate goal over the next hour is to just bring you some information on ModMed RCM, which is only going to be about 10 minutes of me speaking. And then we're actually going to turn over to Marie at Danville Dermatology in Kentucky, and she's going to share her experience, her story on her journey from being just like you, a practice looking potentially for some solutions, to being an active account with us. And I think it's going to be very valuable for everyone in that regard. But first, I want to take a moment to, and we'll also have Q&A, as Emily mentioned. But I want to first take a moment to explain my background. So I grew up at Allergan. I spent about 15 years there, 13 years there. I've been in dermatology for over 25 years. And my time at Allergan, I spent about 10 years doing consulting, work with dermatology practices just like yours, and identifying different areas they can improve, work on. I dealt with financials, their financials, tax returns, did financial benchmarking, looked at flow and efficiency, looked at different areas in the practice they can improve. Spent a lot of time at the, on podium at the AAD, ASDS, a number of other society meetings, presenting practice management and financial benchmarking information. I bring this up to you because I think it's important that you know where the information is coming from, as I have experience both in dermatology practice as well as on the manufacturing pharmaceutical side, as well as the services side, because in 2006, I left Allergan and started a medical billing company called Synergy Medical Billing. And the main reason for that is because so many practices were having issues with their cash flow, managing the cash flow, specific to reporting around billing, EOBs being followed up, payments being followed up with, and working with their staff or working with people who embezzled or left the practice, and they just had a hard time keeping up with the practice, the growth. And I'm sure any one of those areas touches a pain point of yours. And that's actually why I left Allergan and started a medical billing company, Synergy Medical Billing, which then co-founded Ascentix Health with my business partner at the time, Clark Avery. And then that business was acquired by Modernizing Medicine in 2014. The reason why I'm bringing this up as well is because Modernizing Medicine had a great foundation of customers that loved Emma and loved the customer support and what they were getting, but they wanted more. What else can Modernizing Medicine deliver? So Dan Kane, the CEO, contacted us and knew that we focused just on dermatology around revenue cycle management and medical billing, and sought out a solution for his customers that could bring the same level of performance and satisfaction as Emma had, while bringing more resources to the customers. And so that's why we're here today. So as I go to the first slide, Modernizing Medicine and billing, if you look in the middle, it's comprehensive billing process. We all know, hey, you're processing charges, payments, and if you look on the outside of the circle, claims processing, customized billing, denial management, etc., that's basic medical billing. But really what we'd like to do is introduce you to a concept called revenue cycle management, which is the next slide, where we actually look at the whole billing process. That really is, RCM is more than just billing. If you look at the first two purple squares there, you have insurance eligibility verification, you have appointment matters. So we tend to look at RCM as both before the patient comes in to make sure the right patient's coming in and can be seen and can get paid. We also obviously focus on claims processing and claims monitoring, but then on the back end, denial management, collections, and reconciliation. That overall process, when you look at more than just basic medical billing, is really how it impacts revenue from the time the patient comes in until they're paid. That is what revenue cycle management is. So I'm going to use revenue cycle management and medical billing somewhat interchangeably, from the sense of most people don't really know the concept of revenue cycle management yet. But the reality is revenue cycle management far surpasses basic medical billing. And so the next slide, which we call the wheel, really demonstrates that. So if you look at basic medical billing, which is what most internal offices do, they process the claim, the payment, they're working AR, they're looking to their fee schedule to maximize that. But it's really basic medical billing, and a lot of medical billing companies, that's what they focus on, and that's great. With Modernizing Medicine, we look at the whole approach. So it's not just basic medical billing. We also look at, if you look at on the top there, we provide EMA, which is obviously the electronic medical records. And as part of our billing process, and as part of what we deliver, and part of what you pay for in the fee, is we give you EMA. We also provide a preferred PM system. And as you all sure have heard, we have Modernizing Medicine Practice Management System coming out in the near future. But we will provide that to you at no cost as well. And currently, we're providing a different PM system as what we've been using for the last 7 years, but we'll be switching to Modernizing PM for our new customers as soon as it comes out. But my point is we provide technology both in EMA and the preferred PM system. And if you go to the next little purple circle to the right there, you'll see MMIM, or affectionately known internally as MIM, and that is Modernizing Medicine Inventory Management. So not only do we provide you with the EHR and the PM system, we also provide you with the technology that manages your toxins, your fillers, your cosmeceuticals, and your cosmetic procedures. It's basically a point-of-sale system that manages everything all the way down to the product of the unit, of Botox, and the vial, and as a CRM, customer relations management system as well inside it. And so that is integrated with the PM system. And the next level, though, we also provide a software within that called Claim, with a little C there. And that is a software that actually manages the entire time frame of a claim from the time a patient is scheduled till the time the claim is presented and prepared and sent out until it's worked and paid until it's finalized. And that software is actually also a dialogue box between you, your practice, and our account managers here in Modernizing Medicine, and is an encrypted, HIPAA-compliant process that allows you to manage your claim from A to Z if you choose to, but you also have visibility to how we manage your claim. And as I had already alluded to before, we do insurance verification, appointment monitors, and all your patients prior, so we want to show the right patients coming in that will get paid. We also provide a credit for a lockbox. That way the payments are going to a bank. The bank is copying that and depositing in your bank account, and then we get access to that information right away. And then the last three sections are really around the billing is patient support and courtesy calls. So when a patient does get a balance that they're owed, we actually have an automated courtesy call that goes out to them, just let them know that a statement was sent out. It's not a collection call, it's really just a courtesy call. And that has improved our collections from 40 to 400% on patient balances, which is great. And we get no patient complaints because it's really a courtesy call. And then if they've gone through the entire process, the patient balance, they have not paid, we actually give you a pending collection list. And that's a list of patients that have been through the process, they're not paying, but they may have a $2,000 cosmetic procedure they just did a week ago, and they're on this list because of a $50 copay that they didn't pay. You probably don't want to send that patient to collections. So we actually give that list to you and allow you to manage that list and tell us what to do. And of course, you get a monthly AR card, what's going on with the AR, as well as reporting on the entire system. I'm sharing this in detail because it's more than just basic medical billing. We do all these things for our customers within the RCM realm, and that tends to be really important for most people. Now, I did want to take the next step, which is the next slide, to really quickly talk about the benefits of RCM versus medical billing. And I've already alluded to it. It's increased revenue and increased profitability. Bottom line, you want a consistent, predictable performance with who is managing your cash flow. In Modernizing Medicine, we do that with the process that I just outlined. And that's going to be better revenue cycle management, lower claim denial, and low rejection rate. But the next slide actually depicts a little more important part of the process, which is we specialize and we're experienced and we're efficient. What I mean by that is we have over 200 dermatology providers in 85 practices across the country in all time zones. And that's a pretty big feat saying, hey, we know dermatology and this is what we do. And the next question is always asked to me is, well, How many of those are dermatology providers? How many physicians? They are all dermatology providers, either mixed with physicians, and it's about 80-20 split between physicians and PAs and mid-level providers. So yes, we know how to build mid-level providers as well. But we have the people that manage your account are AAPC dermatology certified coders. So we are specialized. We have people that do that. As I mentioned, over 10 years experience, and we process over 50,000 unique dermatology claims per month. And so we know dermatology. So when you're working with us, you know that. But it's really around the technology, process, and the people. So you have advanced technology, as I've already mentioned before, the process around how we manage the claims, and then the outbound courtesy calls as well as approaches. That's our people. And the last two slides, which really kind of gets to the main point, is we do all these things. Next slide, please. But we have a performance that you can actually measure. So the most common measurement for performance in medical billing is net collection ratio. That's how much do you collect of what you're legally entitled to collect. So if you have $1 million in charges and you average about a 30% adjustment ratio, well, then you know you're legally entitled to collect 30 or 70% of that $1 million or $700,000. How much of that do you legally collect? And we, as a company, we average over 98 to 98.7% across our entire company. That takes into account both the patient and the insurance claims, because some people will just look at insurance claims. But we all know the hardest ones to collect are the patient balances once it gets out of the insurance carrier when they say they're denying it or rejecting it or partially paying it. It's the patient balances the hardest to collect. So we actually measure the whole thing. How much do we collect of what you're totally entitled to collect, whereas a lot of other billing companies do not look at the patient claims. They just look at the insurance claims. Now, I want to go to the next slide, which is the last slide, just to remind you that dermatology specific is super important, but it's increasing the revenue flow, lowering the claims. But because if we are touching the claims less, if they're denied or rejected, and you're touching the claims less, it's less impact on you, less things you have to manage, less resources you have, and we all get paid faster. Now, that was a quick version of an overview of RCM and how Modernizing Medicine performs RCM, but I really want to bring you Marie, who is a Danville Dermatology office manager, because she can actually give you about a 30 to 40 minute discussion on where she's at in the process. But more important, I could have given you someone that has 10 or 20 years, or say 5 to 10 years experience with us, but I think it was important to bring someone who has less experience with us, it's newer, because they're fresher memory of what it was to go through the process of what's going on in my practice. Is it time for me to make a change? I'm concerned about how to make the change, what the transition is going to happen, how's that going to affect my cash flow, how's it going to affect my workflow, how frustrated am I going to be, what's going to happen. And so Marie has just recently gone through this process, so she can tell her story to maybe provide some insight as to how you may look at that. So Marie, I'm going to turn it over to you.
No, thank you very much. Good evening to everyone. My name is Marie Miller. I'm the office manager for Danville Dermatology. I actually worked here for about 10 years. We're in Danville, Kentucky. The practice itself is about 35 years old. Dr. Sloan is our doctor here. We have 2 PAs, Melinda and Marcy. We see in excess of 100 patients a day generally. I started out with the company as billing. I did all the billing, some of it paper. We weren't at the time into electronics so very much. So, you basically filed through paper and everything went pretty good. It was never, our practice manager is Mr. Greg Sloan, and it was never his desire to ever allow it to go outside of the office. And at the time, with one physician was all I would deal with, in a part-time mid-level, it really wasn't that bad. You kind of had a lid on it. I wasn't the office manager. I was dedicated solely to billing. I was a certified professional coder, pretty much, piece of cake. But then as a few years came on and I became the office manager, I was still doing all the billing, and then it basically just got more than what I could handle. And so what we, and I guess most practices do, we pull somebody who we think would be the best fit to do billing. No one here had billing experience except me. So what we did was, like I said, we went to the front office, and one of the front office assistants, they seemed to be best suited to do the billing. So what we did, we pulled them in. We're going to teach you to bill. We're going to hire somebody else to the front, and here we go. And in theory, that's very nice. However, as anybody that's ever done much billing, you realize it takes a while, and you never really know everything. So we started out with that. Everything went fine for a while. Then we bring on 2 mid-levels. We lose the part-time person. In comes 2 full-time mid-levels, still doing just one biller and me. Now we're pulling in more nursing, more, office staff. So suddenly office manager is taking on new meaning. Still doing okay, or so I thought we were doing okay. And please excuse me for being nervous just a little bit. But we keep, we're moving right along, and then I start looking at AR, and it starts climbing. Now, I am personal friends with the doctor here, so I dearly love her, and I felt that her practice was my practice, and still do. And I feel if I let them down by not, by AR's climbing, that's their money that I'm supposed to be bringing in. So I go to the practice manager and ask Mr. Sloan, I need another biller. Okay, same process. We pull somebody that we think, is best fitted, that would understand this better. So here we go. We've got 2 billers now and me. Well, I basically have to step out because since we have more staff, we have more providers, we have more things coming in, we've got meaningful use coming in, everything's changing. So I basically had to step away from billing unless you had an absolute need. There's something I needed to code. Okay, and saying that is, with all this happening, I didn't have time to keep up my certification, let alone doing derm-specific anything. So here we go. We're kind of treading water, but needless to say, we were on a sinking ship. And I felt like not only was I on the sinking ship, I was the one that was holding the load of bricks and going down fast. So what happens with us, and I'm trying to stick with our slides, what we faced with in-house billing was whenever billing was kind of like the people in the background, you had to have them, but you just didn't see them very much. Whenever a front office person was out, or 2, heaven forbid, happened to be out at the same time, where would you pull but billing? So here comes the billers to the front. If somebody's out 3 days, that's 3 days that no billing was ever done. So AR keeps climbing. I keep sinking. There were nights that I literally stayed up most of the night trying to figure out what in the world. I felt like quitting, felt like resigning, saying, I just can't handle it. I can't do it. It's too much for me. But again, these were my friends, and I was trying to help. So I just, I was facing, I knew they did not want this to go out of the house. They didn't want outside billing at all. Heard wild stories about how terrible that went. It just wasn't working. So we had brought in another practice management system, hoping that would help. And so here we go. Biggest thing was, with our billers, I can teach you some of the things to do, but I can't teach you how to do denials when I myself am thinking, trying to keep everything going. So denials fell by the wayside. No way to know that the claim was clean when we went with the new practice management. I had to do all of it, and I'm saying that, I'll explain that later, but anything that went on with the clearinghouse, I had to do all the forms, do everything to get that state going, and then, okay, so we get up and running. Then we start, okay, we need to look at some of the dials in between everything else. So the search went on trying to find out what in the world report would have this on it. So I went through probably 100 reports before I found the one that I needed. And by that time, you're looking at a 50-page report that was just working denials. So we're still sinking. Although we got new practice management, I'm still sinking. So, again, we just, I didn't know what else to do. And then I get an email. Now, backing up a little bit, we started with Modernizing Medicine 3 or 4 years ago when electronic medical records first were mandated, and it was derm specific, and the doctor picked it, loved it, and everything. So we had a good rapport with Modernizing Medicine. Everything just went perfect. When we switched over, actually had somebody come in-house and do our training. It was just as smooth as it could be. So when I get an email that says, look what Modernizing Medicine is doing now and can do for me, I was thrilled because I knew I had a chance on getting the practice manager to listen because he had had such a good, just good experience with Modernizing Medicine. So I made a call to Jason, and we talked, and, he would give me things to do. I would go back to the practice manager, and because this office is like pretty much a big family, one of the big things was we don't want to fire anybody. We have billers, but we don't want to have to let anybody go. Well, it came to find out it was a wash. It basically, at its very worst, it would not cost us anything. It would not cost us extra to do this. So that was a problem. That was a plus. Derm specific. I didn't have to worry about keeping up on the coding. There were people that were dedicated. They knew what they were doing. I didn't have to worry about it. They knew what modifiers went with what procedure code. It was just like heaven sent. This was going to save me from sinking. So I went to the practice manager again, explained all this. They know billing, they know coding. They're the ones that this is what they do. And it did. It seemed too good to be true. It's kind of like you're waiting for some, okay, what's this going to cost? What's this going to do? There's something somewhere. And I have to say, there was a few times, you kind of sway back and forth. Should we? Shouldn't we? And lo and behold, Jason flew down to meet me to Kentucky. So, and that was because he made me feel like he cared about my concerns. So we talked. We went to practice manager, back and forth, and finally I got the okay, good to go. So that's what we're doing. Then we began. The good thing about this is one thing it just really surprised me. I have a dedicated account manager, Michelle. She makes me feel like I'm the only person that they have a work with. It never have I ever called that I've been told, they didn't have time, they'd call me back. The only time you'll ever get a let me call you back is if it's something that you've asked that they need to research, and generally that answer is back within 30 minutes. I'll email back and forth. You can call. There's a little message thing in the practice management that you can just send them a straight message. Either way I've ever done it, it was straight back to me, like they were just sitting there waiting to see if I was going to, send them a question. And heaven knows I sent a bunch of questions. Denial management, I don't have to worry about it anymore. There's a little section in MEM that you'd seen earlier they were talking about, that it's not a report I have to go find. I don't have to dig through everything to try to figure out, now, is this the right one? Am I doing correctly? It's right there. It pops up. It tells me exactly what we need. The insurance, the demographics. Here's a code. This is what it was denied for. Basically, that's it. They almost give you the answer just by asking you the question. Once a day, I go through it, and it's done. I click back a little pull-down tab that sends it back to them, and I'm finished. No problem whatsoever. And I know now I've got a clean claim that's going out. In the very beginning, if it happened to get denied, it's taken care of. As far as improved cash flow, I don't deal as much with that part of it as much as the practice manager does. But what I can tell you, when we go pick up the mail in the morning, there's lots and lots of patient payments in there that we didn't see before. And it's just amazing because, you know, again, the billers that we thought we were going to displace, they open mail, they're enjoying it. They don't have all the pressure on them anymore either. They're just like me, you know, they were on the ship too sinking. We actually had our first patient call the other day that actually had received a collection call, so we were a little bit, you know, well, how did it go? He said that whoever it was that called him was very nice and just reminded him, you know, you have a balance. Wasn't mean, wasn't ugly. It was just basically, you know, you've got a balance. Don't know if you're aware of it. And it was so nice. One of the things that also they call and remind patients of their appointments. Can go as a text. You know, it's the patient's decision what they want you to do, which had us completely shut down a company that we had gone with, thus saving us even more money. So that was just, you know, we're more than happy with the collection call. One of the other things that's great is that when a patient previously would call here and ask a question about their bill, again, we had two people in billing that were wonderful. They were trying their very best, but they didn't have the answer. Actually had one of the billers tell a patient one time, well, you get an EOB just like I do. So, you know, that's kind of bad. Could be that the front office is trying to help, and they tell somebody, well, yeah, you've got a bill here, and it's such and such amount. Well, the patient sends the money in. Well, no, that wasn't what they owed. That's what the insurance owed. Now we got to go through the refund process. And we just had times like that. If they talk to one person, they may not get the same answer as the other person gave them. Now all I know is you have people that are billing professionals, coding professionals, that when they call and ask a question, they get the correct answer. And I don't have to worry anymore about who's going to pick up the phone call, who's going to call upset because they got two different answers. I know Modernizing Medicine's taking care of it. I don't have to stay up all night trying to figure out how to jump off the sinking ship. It's taken care of. If I had it to do all over again, I would. It was seamless. When we switched from one system to the next, it was basically seamless. We did not have 1 minute of downtime. It was just easy, you know, like the slide, leave the billing and collections to the experts. That's what I did. Wouldn't trade it again for anything. I would not take it back for anything. As for Mr. Sloan, who was pretty much opposed in the beginning to outsourcing any kind of billing, happy as can be. No fuss whatsoever about it. And we've just, you know, again, we've kept all our staff, and everything is just, it's just perfect. I cannot say enough good things about it.
Great. That's wonderful. Thank you so much, Marie, for sharing your story with all of us tonight. And we're now going to transition to the question and answer session of tonight's webcast. And just as a reminder, you can submit your questions in the questions box on the GoToWebinar panel. So let's see, our first question is, what is the implementation time from contract signing to being operational?
Okay, so...
Oh, I'm sorry.
So Maria, I'm going to go ahead and take this one for you, and this is Tom. So the transition time normally is about 60 days, and that's what we call the transition time. Maria's practice was just about 60 days exactly, and the you know, there are times when we could expedite it a little bit to maybe 45 to 60, and then there's bigger practices that may be 60 to 90. But it also depends on, so that's a normal transition time. But there's also what we call a needs and demand. So if there's a big demand, you know, need is to hurry up as fast as we can, but we always want to make sure that we are bringing practices on in the appropriate manner to where every practice is getting the undivided attention that they need. And so it's very important for us, the 60 days is so that not only can we set everything up and do all the training, because we train you on the software, we train you on everything, but it's also to teach you the process at which to communicate and utilize the resources. But lastly, and more importantly, we also test everything out. So we run claims through to make sure they go through the process and are clean, because if you guys aren't getting paid, we're not getting paid. So it's normally a 60-day process that you can pretty much count on.
Great, thank you, Tom. So we're getting quite a few questions in here now. One of them is, would we have access to our information?
Maria, do you want to take that one?
Yes, I mean, you have total control. There is nothing that's changed at all when we switched over. I mean, all information. What's really nice is, you know, before when we had another practice management, you kind of had to make sure that Emma and this other system married and everything was happy and fine. And now it's just perfect. We have, yes, we have total information.
Yeah, and I'll add to that that, you know, the practice has the same software that we have, and so the practice and our account managers meet monthly with the practices to take them through all the reports, both in the system as well as ones that we bring together, accumulating information. But the practice literally has 24/7 exact access to information, and within claim, the claim management software, as part of that, you actually get to see literally all the nuances to every time the claim is touched and who it's touched by and when it was touched. So it's very valuable that there's 100% transparency.
Great. We have a few questions that are all very similar, and Tom, you may want to address these. What is the cost, and is there a minimum?
So great questions, and I love getting those questions because that means people are interested. I'll just tell you the range is between 6 and 8%. There are practices that, I'll just tell you there's about 6 different factors that affect the price. Number one is the size of the practice. Obviously, a practice that is smaller has a little more risk to it. A practice that is larger, as in volume of collections, has a little more predictability as far as transactions and what we need to do. As well, we look at history. Is a practice a new practice or an older practice? An older practice has a lot more history, historical information. It's more predictable to us, and it allows us to have a better idea of what we need to do. Newer practices, we love new practices, but they tend to be a little less predictable because they don't have a total flow yet, so it's a little harder to manage the number of transactions and the resources needed. The third question is the type of services, i.e. is it a clinical dermatology practice only, or is it a clinical practice with Mohs? And so obviously the Mohs claims are a little higher dollar. You tend to have to put just as much work into them, but there's less transactions, and really a lot of the costs are on transactions. The other is number of providers, which is important because we provide the technology, both the EMR and the PM system, to practices, and each one of those has a cost per provider that I absorb, or the business absorbs. And the reason why that's important is because obviously that affects the cost at which we can then provide the service. And change management, is a practice have a practice manager, an office manager? Has a practice gone through any type of transitions before? Those things also help us understand the needs and risks of the practice as well as the opportunity. So if you look at those different factors, we actually put it into a calculator, so to speak, to predict what that is. There are practices that may be lower than 6%, and they tend to be very large practices, and there are practices that tend to be closer to the 7 to 8%, and they tend to be smaller, newer practices that are less predictable. And that kind of gives the general range. Yes, there is a minimum. We do charge a minimum. That's usually by a provider. Depending on the size of the practice and the number of providers, it can be between $2,000 and $3,500 per provider. And the reason for that, once again, is because the PM cost, the EMR cost, the account management costs, the lockbox costs that we give you credit for, and those are all hard costs that happen every month. And so we need to make sure that we can cover those costs to some degree. And also, the practice, needs to do they need to perform as well. And, practice, especially smaller practices that are newer, may think they're going to do a certain volume, and if they don't, then we're kind of caught on the short end of covering all those costs without the volume or the collections to cover that. So hopefully that helps answer the question as best I can.
Thank you. The next question is this a scheduler as well?
Yes.
Maria, you want to tackle that one?
Yes, and I might say that is probably the easiest scheduler we've ever dealt with. Their front office was ecstatic over the scheduler. We really like it.
The next question is, who does the follow-up for denied claims?
They do. I don't. It's always, it's in there that I can see that it's finished, but I basically, once we turn the claim over to them, they take care of everything.
Yeah, and I'll expand on that just slightly. So Marie hit it right on the head. So the practice basically generates the claim, and we take it from there. And we obviously to take it through the process, make sure it's got all the modifiers. We send it out, follow up on all rejections and denials, and anything that comes through, come back denied, partially denied, anything of that nature, we handle 100%. And as a matter of fact, I love the fact that our team, we have a great operations team and a patient support team that takes every practice personally. Maria alluded to this earlier, that Michelle's available and she answers questions, but our job really is to make you feel like we're in the back door with you. We're right there in the office with you, so you can reach out and ask a question. But also, in the software that we provide, you can actually visibly see every single time we touch a claim. So if a claim goes out and it comes back denied, you literally can see that it was denied, it came back. You can see who touched it, what they did with it, if we need to request information, or if we went in EMA to gather the information, or we reprocessed because something else was going on with it. So we manage that entire process, and you have 100% visibility to it.
Great. The next question is back to regarding the cost. Is the fee also applied to cosmetic procedures where people pay cash up front?
Absolutely not. So our fee, our percentage is based solely on the clinical claims that we work and are involved with. There are cosmetic claims that we provide a software for you to utilize, and I'll just be honest with you, and I think any practice is crazy to pay anyone to process their cosmetic claims unless they truly don't have the staff to process it. But we provide the software, so it makes it easy. It streamlines your point of sale time and checking out a patient with the aesthetic and cosmetic patients. So we provide that at no cost to you, and we generate no revenues from that, nor do we choose to. I grew up in dermatology. I grew up at Allergan, so I know that the process really well, especially in that area. And practices need to be able to generate the income that they can with the resources they have. On the clinical side, there's a lot more to it. On the cosmetic side, it's really a data entry function. We do have a few practices out there that have asked if we would do the data entry for them, and I dissuade them aggressively, saying it costs you really nothing to do it yourself, and it's really easy, and we're happy to teach you. But no, we do not get involved in collecting revenues in any manner, shape, or form from cosmetic and aesthetics.
Okay. The next question is, will we be required to enter charges of any type?
No.
Thank you, Marie. That's awesome. No. Actually, when you guys are utilizing EMA, that in itself provides the information on HIPAA 1500 form that then comes through the system to us, and we generate everything from there. So really, the physician does their entry in the chart notes and closes out the patient, the patient. And that then goes into the system and generates the HIPAA 1500, which we then, what I say, scrub and sterilize, so to speak, to make sure it goes out as clean as possible. And I did want to bring up one thing. denials was asked earlier. We work really hard at making sure claims go out clean the first time. We have less than about 2.5%, 3% rejection rate across our entire company, which means that 97 to 98% of the claims that go out to the clearinghouse go out clean. And part of that is because of the appointment reminders, insurance verification, but part of that also is claim scrubbing software, as well as looking for the modifiers. Because if we have to touch that claim, it becomes very expensive to both you and I. And we want to make sure those things go out clean in the first place. And then the last thing I was going to mention on denials, we average about a 4 to 6% denial rate, which means that about 94% of the claims are paid the first time through. Once again, doing the extra homework and doing the work is very important to get it paid clean the first time. Secondly, if there is denials that tend to group themselves, so to speak, we'll actually look at those and rank those and help communicate those to you, because if we can provide the information back to you on something that tends to get rejected or denied a lot, then, and it's in your hands, then it allows you to make the adjustments that then helps everything go out cleaner and then less people have to touch it.
And may I add, I've had very, very few denials. Amazingly, very few.
Great. Another question here is, how do you handle collecting outstanding balances, and is the collection real time?
So I'll jump on that one again. Outstanding balances, these are patient balances. So we have a process at which we send out a claim. Obviously, as soon as we get a denial or the patient balance, it has to be transferred to patient balance. We send out a statement, obviously, to the patient. And then 30 days later, we send out a second statement. And about 15 days later, or the 45th day from the first statement, we actually have an automated call just to let them know, hey, there's a balance due. You send a statement out. And then on the 60th day, a statement goes out. On the 75th day, another automated call. And then on the 90th day, we evaluate the account they still haven't paid, to at which either they have a certain level of dollar amount that they get a personal call, or they go to a pending collection list and get sent back to you. And it is real time. I apologize. And it is real time. So also when a patient does pay, they can either send a check. Obviously, sometimes it goes to the practice. Although the address we have goes to the lockbox, and that sometimes takes some time to work itself out as far as timing. But we also have a patient support team here that is very well trained and very experienced in talking to the patients, at which they may have a question or they may need to make a payment. And there's a patient portal that they can either make the payment themselves, or we'll actually process the payment ourselves to your account directly, and the patient can get a receipt on demand.
Thank you. The next question is, do you handle any accounts that need to deal with being subjected to general excise tax on medical services, and therefore we need to add general excise tax to the claim?
So I'll address that one by saying, great question. I will look into it and get back to you. Our account managers handle that and handle those more directly. I'm a little more farther removed from the actual daily activity of those claims. So I will look into that and we will get an answer back to you on that.
Great, thank you. What is the frequency that you and your staff communicate with Modernizing Medicine?
I generally talk, oh, I'm sorry. Generally, I probably talk to Michelle or email Michelle every other day, just depending on, what's going on. And we're still pretty early into it because there'll be things that'll come up. Like if I receive something from an insurance company that's just an update or anything, I'll forward the information to Michelle or Priya, and so I usually email or talk to them about every other day.
Great. This next question is regarding claims. If claims are reviewed and education required to ensure future clean claims, how is this information relayed to the practice and providers?
With us, Michelle will call me or email me, or it'll pop up in MEM as what's going on. They'll offer it, I'm trying to think of one in particular. Like if say we ended up billing out for a new patient, and Medicare says no, you can't, they don't meet the requirements, that will pop up in MIM, and we go from there. Does that answer the question?
I think so. Thank you. Let's see. Do you ever have to make outbound calls to the patient to collect a balance, or does Modernizing Medicine handle every single one of those calls?
Modernizing Medicine handles every single one, and I'm happy to let them.
If you have a credit card on file, can you charge the credit card if the balance is not paid after a set period of time? Example, charge the card after 45 days.
We don't do that. Tom may know more about it.
Yeah, Tom's going to defer that one for a minute. I'm going to pull one of my account managers in here to answer that question. So let's go to another question, and we'll get back to you on that.
Okay. So the next question is, how does ModMed RCM integrate with ModMed EMA?
Would you mind asking the question one more time?
Sure. How does ModMed RCM integrate with EMA?
So we are one and the same. So as we have a PM system that we utilize to build out of Curio, which is a practice management system, and that kind of is the house for the demographics and all the information, the financial information. Obviously, EMA houses the medical information and charting information. So EMA basically creates the information once it's closed on the patient, and it basically goes to Curio. We pull that information down and then scrub it from there. So they're actually integrated and work hand in hand. When Modernizing Medicine PM comes out, they will be one and the same, one login, and it's all one system. And by the way, I have Michelle Marie. Michelle's actually here.
Hi.
Hi.
And she's going to answer that credit card question.
So with the credit cards, because it's PHI, you're not allowed to keep those on file. So you couldn't run it if there's a patient balance. You'd have to call the patient and get the information from them.
Great. Thank you so much, Michelle.
You're welcome.
We have a follow-up question regarding the cost. How can we financially justify making the transition from in-house billing?
Okay, well, I'll jump on that from an overview standpoint on a few points. So a number of different things. Every practice is different, and I've done this for over 15 years of financial analysis and looked at practices and finances. And when you actually look at the technology costs, which is PM and the EHR, when you look at the clearinghouse costs, statement costs, phone time costs, space, not to mention resources, obviously, with staffing. Those are all costs. And in most practices, depending on their size, and if I have a $10 million practice versus a $500,000 practice, obviously the percentage is going to vary. But it tends to run in the 6 to 13% range, depending on the practice. And a lot of people laugh at me and say, oh, no, it's not. We're at 3%. Well, when I look at the practice, and I've done financial analysis and benchmarking for almost 20 years now, when you actually look at what is being done and who's working rejections, who's working denials, who's doing data entry, who's doing claim entry, who's answering the phone calls from the patients, it usually is more resources, as Marie alluded to earlier, than what you really think are just my billers that are just doing the claims. And so there are practices out there who are perfect, and they're amazing, and they're wonderful, and they're low cost. And if you're on this call, that's fantastic, and I commend you. But most of the people on this call probably have some level of interest in what else is out there. And if you're asking yourself that question, you may not know what your costs are. And so I highly recommend you take a look at those. And my sales team is happy at Modernizing Medicine to help you take a look at those and do the analysis. But let me take a step back now and say, okay, well, if I'm paying, and I'm going to make up a number, whether I'm outsourcing it or I'm in-housing it, and I'm paying 7%. And that's all I'm paying, or make it 5%. Let's make it 5% just for fun. And I'm paying 5% of my net collections every year on this. And then I sit there and say, okay, I'm a $2 million practice. So that means I'm paying 5%, $2 million, which is $100K, 100 grand a year. And that's all in. By the way, when you look at your staffing costs, it should include all the burden costs, such as your PTO, time off, taxes, etc. But when you look at your costs, and say it's only 5% of $2 million, which is $100,000, then the next question I would have you do is look at, are your claims going out, in 1 to 2 days? Are your payments being posted in 1 to 2 days? What's your net collection ratio? And I gave the ratio earlier, and I've spoken on podium for years about this. But if you're at 93% net collection ratio, you may think that's pretty good. And if Modernizing Medicine's at 98%, and you say that's really good, well, that's a 5% difference. 5% of $1 million or $2 million is 100 grand. So great, you're paying 5%, and I may charge you 6.5% or 7%. I'm going to use 7% just for easy math. So I'm charging you about $40,000 more a year to do your collections, but I just collected $100,000 that you were leaving on the table. So to me, it's a more expensive decision to make to stay with what you know and you have, even if you're paying less, if you're leaving dollars on the table. Not to mention the technology we provide. And I would, have a hard time with most practices, unless they're really, really big, to be able to justify the percentage not paying for it, number one. Number two, there are times when you may be doing better than other times because you have people that get sick, you have people that leave, you potentially are being embezzled from, you may have a manager leave. The nice thing about having Modernizing Medicine is there's a consistent, predictable team that works your claims every single day. We're going to get them out in less than 24 to 48 hours. We're going to get the payments posted, and it's going to be, the whole process is going to work for you. So when you look at the tangibles and intangibles, there's a story there, and not to mention, as Marie said, the peace of mind. The peace of mind that the person guiding your ship through the glaciers are people that are specialized and know your business and have been doing this a long time. So is it going to be perfect for every single practice? I don't think so, but I would say 80 to 90% of the practices out there, it's a great alternative to look to outsourcing, providing you're getting all of the types of things that I pointed out in the wheel that I mentioned earlier, not just medical billing.
Great, thank you, Tom. And Marie, is there anything that you would like to add?
I just want to reiterate, it's nice to go to bed at night and know that it's taken care of. And I don't have to worry about it, and I know professionals are doing it, and they're keeping up with things that frees me to keep up with things that as an office manager I need to do, and I just can't say enough about how wonderful they've been to work with.
And I would just like to thank Marie for taking her time as well in Kentucky, and I'm in California, and it's early here, but it's late across the country, so we sincerely appreciate everyone on this line as Emma customers, Modernizing Medicine, Dan Kane, Michael Sherling, our founders, wholeheartedly love and appreciate dermatology and our customers, and we thank you for that. And also thank you for taking the time just to hear more about the other services we offer, and feel free to inquire if you have more questions.
Thank you so much, Marie and Tom, for joining us tonight. We really appreciate the insight and hearing your story. This will conclude tonight's webcast. If we did not get a chance to answer your question, we will follow up after the broadcast. And if you are interested in learning more about ModMed RCM, we can assist with a billing evaluation by simply emailing us at info@modmed.com. Thank you, everyone, and have a great night.